This is Grape Video 28, Pruning Mature Grapevines, the Basic Steps. This is the video that will bring together all the things we've been talking about regarding pruning in Grape Videos 20 through 27. In this video, you will actually learn how to prune a mature grapevine. This is the video that we've been waiting for. There are certain pruning decisions to be made before entering the vineyard. Before we even step up to the vine, there are certain things that we will have decided. One is the training system, and we covered that in great detail in Grape Videos 6 through 19. So if you're not sure what training system you're using or what that's about, you need to go back to Grape Videos 6 to 19. Pruning severity. How much will we leave on the vine? How much will we take off? We discussed that in Grape Video 23. And before you go to the vineyard, you should have an idea of the pruning severity that you intend to use when pruning the grapevine. And then lastly, basic skills for pruning. You can't prune a vine unless you have the skills to do it, and we covered that in Grape Video 21. So with those things in mind, let's proceed to prune a mature grapevine. Let's begin by outlining the steps in the pruning of a mature dormant grapevine. And let's say that mature dormant grapevine means a vine that has attained full size for the space that it's in. And that's usually around the third or fourth year in the life of a vineyard. It could be in the fifth year, but most often the third or fourth year. Well, three of those steps are as follows. Replace the trunk as needed, and we covered that in Grape Video 21. Replace the cordon as needed, and we also covered that in Grape Video 21. And create a layer for an adjacent empty vine space as needed, and we covered that in Grape Video 24. But truthfully, we don't do that often when we prune a mature vine. We're not replacing trunks or cordons or creating a layer. Those are sort of add-ons or supplemental tasks that we do to vines some of the time, but most of the time we're not involved in these steps. So we're going to set those aside because you've already covered those in previous videos. The four steps that are remaining are those listed below. And we're going to cover those and actually demonstrate them through this video. Let's move on. Okay, now it's time to concentrate on the basic steps for pruning a mature dormant grapevine. And we start by saying, focus your eyes directly on the renewal zone. And we discussed the renewal zone in great detail in Grape Video 22. The next thing we do is we actually prune the desired number of fruiting buds as indicated by the pruning severity that we have chosen. Then we create renewal spurs where they're needed, and we discussed renewal spurs in Grape Video 21. And finally, we eliminate the excess. That means anything that we don't want on the vine after we've done the basic pruning and the creating of renewal spurs is eliminated, and we cut it off the vine to make the vine nice and clean and ready for the coming growing season. Okay, there's a few things that you may want to do after the pruning is done that is supplemental to the pruning process. And what do I mean by that? Well, one good technique for finding anything you may have missed during the pruning process is to shake the vine, grab the trunk and shake it a little, and sometimes that will show you parts of the vine that you didn't see, maybe some canes on the back side of the vine that you should have pruned off, but you just didn't see in the process of pruning. And by shaking the vine a little, those will become apparent and you can kind of touch up your pruning job. And then after the pruning is done, you may want to make extra pruning cuts on the brush to be removed from the trellis. This is the brush that you've already cut from the vine and it's hanging there free on the trellis. But sometimes it's so long and so involved in the wires of the trellis that it's going to be hard to pull that brush off of the trellis unless you make some extra pruning cuts. And this may be the time to do it. And then, do you pull the brush from the trellis right at the time of pruning or not? Well, that's a matter of personal preference. Some growers will let someone else come along, perhaps a student who comes after school and pulls brush, doesn't have the skills of a pruner, but just pulls brush, and that's a separate operation in the vineyard. But other growers will have people pull the brush right at the time of pruning. So that's a decision you have to make, but it's really an extra step after the pruning is done. Okay, now we're getting closer. What we're going to do is to actually show you video of the pruning process on 3 vine training systems. And the first one we're going to demonstrate is the mid-wire cordon training system. And here is a schematic of mid-wire cordon training from Grape Video 7. So if you need to refresh your memory on this training system, go to Grape Video 7. And now we're going to actually show you how we prune this vine. And we'll start right now. Okay, this is a Chardonnay grapevine trained mid-wire cordon. And as we approach the vine, we already know that it is trained mid-wire cordon. And we know that we're going to try to save spurs every 5 inches, a 2-node spur, to give us the right shoot density during the growing season. Now, as we start to create these spurs, look at what we're about to do here. The cane that I'm about to prune here is not the best quality, but it's the one closest to the cordon. So we're going to prune that to a little stub of a spur to keep renewal close to the cordon for another year. And then we're going to go up a little higher to take the actual fruiting spur for this year. There, that's the spur, and this is the fruiting spur. Then we clean up along the way. Now this set of 2 canes is about of equal quality. So we're going to take the one closest to the cordon and remove the one that's up a little higher. Like that, okay? There we spurred the lower one, took the higher one. Now we're going to take one of these off, save the other. This is just cleaning up stuff that isn't usable along the cordon there. We're taking now here's a good choice right there. Look at that. There are 2 canes. I'm holding one in my left hand. It's of much poorer quality. We're going to take the larger, higher quality cane that happily is nearer to the cordon. There we go. And then we spur that. No choice, only one cane there. As we come along, 2 of about equal quality. So we'll take just one, remove the other. Same here. Now, coming up, we're going to spur this one, but then we're going to take the one cane that is of a larger diameter and of better color and spur that for fruiting, and then we're going to leave just a little nub of a spur on the last cane. Watch this. Here. Okay, that's just getting rid of old wood. This is for fruiting. This is the little renewal to keep the cordon working. Now as we come back to the middle of the vine, right here, we're going to save some renewal spurs. Why? Well, we'd like to replace these cordons. They're getting rather sparse. And so we'd like to have some growth back in the middle of the vine that will actually create some nice long canes that we can use then in the next year to replace these cordons. Here is the saving of the renewal spurs. Just getting rid of stuff there. That's the spur right there. And that was broken, so we had to save a spur on a spur. That part is done. So we've pruned the vine to the number of nodes that we can. We save renewal spurs. And the third step is to remove the excess. There's not much on this vine, but there are some things along the trunk that we're going to prune off. And then we're going to remove the excess at the base of the vine. There's lots of growth. We like to have plenty of growth so we have choices, but we don't need all of them. So we'll take most of those canes off, but I am going to save one as a trunk renewal cane like this. And there you have it. And we've just finished pruning the vine. Now, we could leave it like that, but we're going to go back and pull the brush to show you what it looks like after all the brush is pulled. Here we go. In my own vineyard, I pull the brush as a separate operation at a separate time, but some people like to pull the brush right at the time of pruning. Okay, now we have it. I shook the vine a little to see if I've missed anything, and perhaps I have. And that is the finished job of pruning a Chardonnay grapevine to mid-wire cordon training. We're going to prune another Chardonnay vine to mid-wire cordon as shown here, but this time we're going to use a short 14-inch lopper rather than pruning shears. What we've got to do here is to clean out some of the canes that are coming from the adjacent vine for a start. But then let's see how we proceed with pruning this mid-wire cordon trained vine with a 14-inch lopper. There, okay. Save the spur. I like using the loppers. They're actually easier to use than a pruning shear at times, and you can get in better and faster than with a pruning shears. So I think they're pretty handy. Not much of a spur there, but we'll do it. See, now I'm taking the lower one and saving the higher one because it looks to be of higher quality. In this case, they're about the same. Just getting rid of old wood there. Short spur there, coming down. There. And we're about done. We're taking a piece of the next vine off just so you can see better what we've done. So, there. That's about the end of the pruning of that. Now we're coming back to the middle, and we're going to start working on spurs possibly. Let's see what we do, and then cleaning up along the trunk. Okay. There's a lot more on this vine to clean up down along the trunk. Removing the excess. Removing the excess. There we go. There we go. Now we get down to the base, and I like to leave a fair amount growing at the base of the vine. It's the insurance policy in case something goes wrong during the winter that you can start to renew the vine. So I don't mind the mess at the base of the vine. Let's see, what do we have there? No, that doesn't look so healthy, so we'll get rid of that. Okay, do we have it all? The vineyard is right next to a big woods, and you can see there's lots of leaves that blow out from the woods. So now we're going to pull the brush so we can see what it looks like. Here we go. We do summer pruning, so the canes aren't terribly long. They go to the top of an 8-foot trellis here. And so the brush pulling is fairly easy. Would be much more difficult if we didn't do summer pruning, which we'll get into in another video. There we go. So there we have mid-wear cordon, spur pruning of Chardonnay. Well, now we're going to switch to the Scott Henry training system, and this is a schematic of the Scott Henry training system from Grape Video 9. If you need to go back to Grape Video 9 to refresh your memory of this training system. Basically, Scott Henry has two fruiting zones. It has an upper fruiting wire and a lower fruiting wire. And this schematic shows those two sets of fruiting zones, and this is an elaborate system here with 4 different trunks for each part of that fruiting zone. So let's take a look now in the vineyard of what's going on when we prune this vine. Okay, as we approach this Chardonnay grapevine that is trained with Scott Henry, the first thing I want to point out is that we have 3 or 4 trunks going on here, as we did in the schematic, and I much favor that because we can replace portions of the vine independent of the others when we have each part of the vine in each of the fruiting zones on its own trunk. And with the amount of winter injury that we get in this vineyard, that's very useful. So here we are, proceeding to prune out the upper fruiting zone, which is a cordon with spur pruning, much like the mid-wear cordon. And we proceed along. We're using pruning shears again here. A little spur there. Now a little spur there. Fruiting spur. Okay. Now we're going to take the larger cane there and spur the one closer to the cordon. We're going to use that as a fruiting spur and keep going, cleaning up things. Nothing good there. We take it all off. There. Now we're going to take that little nubbin and spur that very close to maybe get some growth there. Not much, but we'll take whatever we can get along this cordon that's very sparse. And we'll have one more spur out at the end and take the rest off. Now we're going back to the center. We're going to look for any renewal spurs that we might get to be able to renew those upper cordons, but I'm not sure that we're going to get any. Let's see. And then we're going to work on the lower fruiting zone with cane pruning. Let's go. Okay. Notice how I could switch from a pruning shear to a lopper quite quickly with having both of those readily available on the tool belt. And there we go. I find that very handy because those loppers really can make easy work of the larger pruning cuts at times. So we're going to prune that off. Now I'm looking to see if that cane is adequate, but I already know that I've got some pretty good renewal canes near the ground. So I'm going to go and take that young trunk right off and replace it with a renewal that I have already decided is worthy at the ground. As we come down, oh, there's some more to remove that I didn't see the first time. Removing the excess along the trunks. And now we're going to prune out some renewal canes to begin new trunks and have fruiting along the lower fruiting wire. Okay. Yeah, that looks like a good one. So we'll take the other one off. We'll clean up all the others that are down there that we really don't need. Removing the excess. Looking around through the leaves to see if there's anything else we need to prune off. And now we've essentially finished the pruning. So we're going to go back and we're going to pull the brush so you can see what it looks like when the job is done. Pulling the brush is a lot of work, but it's actually easy work because you don't have to think about it. Just pull and yank. Okay, we've got the brush off, and now we're going to bring those canes up and put them on that lower fruiting wire. Here we go. We're going to get into tying grapevines in a later video. There. And I think we've got it. We'll take a look at a Chardonnay grapevine on Scott Henry training with the upper fruiting zone a cordon with spurs, and the lower fruiting zone is 2 new canes, renewals brought up from the ground. This is the third training system that we will use to demonstrate the pruning of a mature grapevine. This is top wire cordon training, and it is discussed in Grape Video 12. So if you need to review that training system, here it is, and as the name implies, it involves a cordon along the top wire of the trellis, and then we have canes originating from that cordon. So let's see how we would prune a vine trained to top wire cordon. This is a Concord grapevine in a vineyard that is between its 3rd and 4th growing season. And as we approach this vine, you might say, oh my gosh, what a tangled mess of spaghetti. How are we possibly going to make sense out of pruning this vine? Well, the reason we're going to make sense out of it is because we already have in our mindset that we're training this vine to top wire cordon, as we just saw in the schematic. So let's proceed and see how we change this pile of spaghetti into a nicely pruned grapevine. Yes, we're outlining that is the renewal zone, and we're going to start on the right edge of the vine and start to make cuts along what is a brand new cordon established the past growing season. And we're pruning to about 5 node canes as we go along, and we just sort of feel our way along that cordon to find out where each of the canes is attached to that cordon, and we come down that cane, sometimes having to cut free tendrils that are attached to it. And when we find the end of the cane, about 5 nodes down, we will cut it off just like that. And then we go down, and if we have too many, I spurred that one because I thought I didn't need all the canes. Now we come down, cut another one. There's the next. Isn't that beautiful wood? Bronzy brown wood, well matured. And we just work our way down, sort of by braille, feeling our way down the cane, down the cordon, and we get down to the bottom of that cane, and we're cutting a few clingers free. That's another word for tendril. Growers often call the tendrils clingers. And We get into the middle section. There we are. We've got 2 canes right there, so I spurred the one to a short spur, and then the other one is a long cane. We try to keep a lot of growth along the cordon to keep it healthy as possible. So even if we have too many canes on a cordon, instead of pruning it flush, we'll take the cane that we really don't need along there and spur it to a 1-bud spur to keep some healthy growth along the cordon. Here we are proceeding down. Now we're on the second side of the vine, working our way down. And we really don't care about that mess of spaghetti. We're not focusing on what we don't want. We're focusing when we prune a vine on what we do want to retain, what we do want on the vine. And we just ignore the rest of that mess and keep going down. Yes, it can be quite challenging at times when there's a lot of growth like this, but if you just keep your focus on what you're trying to do with your training system, there, it looks like we have it. Now, I'm looking in the center and I'm going to do some spurring right there and right there. In case that cordon should fail, I want an opportunity to replace the cordon. Now I'm doing the elimination. Eliminate the excess. We want nothing along the trunks. And we're trying to make nice, clean pruning cuts. We're working our way down, feeling our way down those 2 trunks to make sure that we get all the growth off. Now, on Concord, we often don't save many renewals at the base because it's a hardy variety and we don't often renew the trunks. Whereas on many wine grapes, we save lots of renewal capability near the ground. It looks like we're done pruning. Whoops, I missed one. And we go back and now we're going to do the brush pulling. The pruning is done. We could walk away from it, and I probably should have made more cuts of this long brush before I started pulling. Now I'm going to have to get out and cut some more. Otherwise, it's just too difficult to pull the brush off. But we're trying to show you by pulling the brush what the finished pruning job looks like on this vine. And if I were not in a rush to get through this video, I would have cut more brush away like those long canes and make the brush pulling job even easier. But we're trying to save time in this demonstration, so I wasn't doing quite as much cutting of that excess brush as I should have. But here we go. Just yank it out, and we've got most of it away now. And you can begin to see the structure of this young vine going into its 4th year and what it's going to look like, pretty much like the schematic that we showed you in the previous slide. And there you have it. There you have it. This is on a lovely November day, and it's a nice time to be out pruning. That's the finished job. I didn't do such a great job with the brush pulling, but I think the pruning turned out fairly well for the goal that we had, which was to leave 5-node canes along that new cordon at the top of the trellis. We have now pruned for you grapevines with 3 different training systems, and in all those cases we have followed these pruning steps as we outlined at the beginning of this video. It's all the same, just applied to a different type of training system to focus, prune, create, and eliminate. We need to add that when you prune grapevines, rarely do you find a perfect grapevine that fits the idealized concept of the training system you're trying to duplicate. For example, we showed you in a previous video this section of barren cordon, and you'll come upon things like this often, and you will not be able to fulfill the idealized concept of the training system on most of the vines that you prune. You will compromise. You will add extra buds elsewhere because you have a barren section of cordon. There will not be a trunk renewal available to replace a trunk or a cordon. This is one of the reasons we've so much stressed the use of renewal spurs to keep parts of the vine viable, lively, so that you can replace trunks, you can replace cordons. There will be other issues that you will come upon with poor wood quality due to the maturation of the wood in the fall being poor due to a short season. So many different things will interfere with the perfection that you hope to apply to the grapevine. And you will learn over time to make adjustments to that perfect model that you're trying to follow. But that's always the goal. That's always the goal, to make each grapevine look as close as you can with your skills to the ideal model of the training system you're applying your techniques to in pruning. Let me give one more example of how your creative pruning skills with experience will be able to make up for some of the imperfection of the vines. This is Don Peak near Pulteney, New York, decades ago, pruning either Concord or maybe Catawba. He grew a lot of Catawba vines. And so when we look at this vine with the larger, older cordon at the top, it doesn't look as nice as that young vine we pruned a few slides ago. In fact, this area of the cordon is rather barren, and I only see one cane there, this one. This looks like a cane, but it's actually an arm, a vertical arm, and on it there are two canes supported, these two. So my guess is that what Donnie's in the process of doing, he's going to make a pruning cut on that vertical arm right about there, and that's going to allow him to save two canes on that vertical arm, and he's probably going to cut them just below that lower trellis wire, somewhere around there, because if he leaves them any longer, the fruit will get so low he won't be able to catch it in the harvester. So this doesn't look at all like the ideal concept of a top wire cordon with canes coming down directly from the cordon. But this is the creative genius of a guy like Don, who has years and years of experience making up for the imperfection of the vine. Maybe he can't renew the trunk. Maybe there's nothing there to renew it with. Maybe he's got so many acres to prune he can't begin to renew all the trunks and all the cordons, or he'll never get through the pruning for the winter. For whatever reason, he's using his creative pruning skills to make up for the imperfection of the vine structure, and you will learn to do that too with time. And to repeat what we said at the very beginning of this pruning series, just because you've watched these videos does not mean that you are now a grape pruner. Oh no, oh no. It takes experience. You've got the skills, you've got the concepts, you've got the ideas of what a training system is used for, how it's used, renewal spurs, trunk renewals, pruning severity, all these things we talked about in the past 9 videos. But you're only really going to make this technology your own by going out and practicing like these students are doing in a pruning school in the Finger Lakes region of New York many, many years ago. So take this information, go out, get your equipment, get ready, and go prune. Well, we thank you for your attention, and with these 9 videos that we have presented to you on pruning, you should be able to go out and start practicing pruning in the vineyard right now, or as soon as possible. But we're going to tell you that we're going to have 6 more videos, some on clothing to wear, equipment to use, and then special cases of pruning, such as winter injured vines and what to do with those, or how to prune an abandoned vine that hasn't been pruned for many years, or mechanical pruning. What about using special gadgets to prune the grapevines? And then summer pruning. But those are all supplemental. Those are all add-ons. Right now, it's up to you to take the skills that we've presented in these past 9 videos and go out and begin to get experience with the pruning of grapevines. Good luck with that. And as always, happy grape growing.